Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining our March onX Hunt 101 Masterclass. My name is Jack Headland. I'm going to be your host tonight. We're going to give it just a minute or two to let everybody get logged in and get situated and everything. So while we're waiting for everybody, just a little bit of housekeeping to kick things off. Your audio and video are turned off, so we can't see you or hear you. So if you have noise in the background, no big deal. It's not affecting anybody else. If you do have questions, we have a couple members of our customer experience team answering questions in the background. So use that Q&A box down below, should be near the bottom of your screen on most devices. That's the best spot to ask questions. Chat, there's a chat box as well. That's also there if you just want to let us know, hey, tuning in from Maryland or wherever you're tuning in from, that's great. But questions get lost in the chat, so there's just no real good way for us to answer them. So please, if you do have a question, use that Q&A box. If you do have a question that's pertaining like to your account specifically, by that I mean anything to do with billing, passwords, renewal dates, things like that, we just don't quite have the ability to answer on a live webinar like this. So any of those types of questions or anything that you think of that comes up after the class, you can send to our customer support email. That email address is help@onxmaps.com. We'll mention that a few times throughout the class, but it's help, H-E-L-P, at onxmaps.com. This class is being recorded, so if you do have to drop off early or there's a part that you want to go back and rewatch or anything like that, we will email you a video link. It'll be up on the YouTube channel tomorrow, and we'll send you a link to that video so you can watch it on YouTube once it gets uploaded. You'll get that email around this time tomorrow. They get sent out 24 hours post-class. Finally, we are doing a giveaway at the end of the class like we do on almost all of our classes, giving away some onX t-shirts. So if you're interested in winning one of those, make sure you stick around for the end to get the link to the entry form so you can fill that out. All right. Looks like most folks are kind of in here and situated. So let's talk about the agenda for the evening. We're going to start off by talking about the different membership options that you have and what each of them means, what they get you, how they differ. Then we'll get into the actual onX Hunt app itself. We'll go over map layers. That's kind of the bread and butter of the app. We'll talk about how to use the app when you're offline, how to use some of the map tools like waypoints, the compass mode, changing base maps, and some of our different imagery options that are available to you. How to perform a search, whether it's a search for GPS coordinates, a landowner name, or a place. We'll go through all of that. And then at the end, we'll save some time for some live Q&A as well as that giveaway. So first things first, different membership options available to you in the onX Hunt app. We really have kind of three levels is how I break it down. If you're brand new to onX, you can start a trial membership, and that basically gets you paid access for a week. So there might be some folks in here that are on a trial membership. If at the end of that trial, you elect not to purchase a membership, you get bumped to what's called a basic membership. There's probably some folks in here that have a basic membership. Now, a basic membership doesn't get you a whole lot of access as far as like the tools and layers go. You're able to see the satellite imagery of the map. You're able to see your location, and that's about it. It's a free version of the app, so it is going to be kind of scaled down compared to what you get if you purchase a membership. Should you choose to purchase, you kind of have two options to go with. We have a premium membership and an elite membership. The premium membership is broken down into two levels, so I kind of lied, but there's not a whole lot of variation with them. Premium membership gets you map layers, state-specific map layers for one state. So that's your private property boundaries, your government lands / public lands, any other state-specific programs like walk-in areas, things like that. Premium one state gets you access for one state. You could also go with a premium two-state membership. So just like the name sounds, gets you access to 2 states. We created that 2-state membership a couple of years ago for the people that were like, hey, I really only hunt like my home state and the neighboring state. So I hunt, Minnesota, and then I go over to Wisconsin every year and hunt that. Those are the only 2 states I need. Or maybe somebody who's coming from the East Coast and likes to hunt elk in Colorado every year. So they want North Carolina and Colorado. That's kind of the idea behind the 2-state membership. And then we have kind of our full spectrum membership, which is our elite membership. So that gives you access to all 50 states plus Canada. And it also gets you access to a bunch of other tools within the map, some of which we'll talk about, like some of our imagery options that we've released within the last couple of years. Those are elite only features. There's a couple of other tools in there as well that are for elite members. We won't be able to go over all of them tonight because this is a 101 and some of those are beyond that. But just so you're aware, there are other tools and features available to you. And you also get access to our elite benefits or elite pro deals. So those kind of go into a few different categories. We have some hunt research tools and draw application services. So for folks, this is, if you're a Western big game hunter, whether you live in the West or you travel to the West, this is the time of year everybody's applying for their deer tags, their elk tags, their moose, sheep, goat, pronghorn, etc. So we've got some educational tools available to you there as an elite member, as well as some kind of general education for different pursuits is how I put it. So we have different educational courses, some of which are free, some of which are discounted. Things like the Hunting Public's Deer School. We have the Turkey Academy with Mossy Oak, the Elk Collective. We have a couple of different shooting courses on there with Vortex and Sequence Precision, some dog training courses with Retriever Roadmap and Upland Institute. So a lot of good stuff in there. And then just some straight up discounts on hunting gear like, Silencer Central, Mossy Oak, First Light, Weatherby, Vortex, Final Rise, Schnee's Lacrosse. I don't mean this to sound like a sales pitch or anything, but that elite membership, if you do choose to go up to that elite membership and you're already buying hunting gear, you can make your money back really quickly just in the money you save in those discounts there. So if that's something you're not aware of, take a look at it, check it out. I think there's some cool stuff in there that folks will dig. So, all right, I'm going to stop sharing on my computer here, and I'm going to pull up the app on my tablet. So this will be on an iPad. So it'll look very similar if you're watching on an iPhone or, of course, an iPad. If you're on an Android device, some things might look a little bit different, but the functionality is going to be very much the same. It just might be a couple buttons that look different. Hopefully that doesn't confuse anybody. If you are watching me on a computer or on a tablet or something, and you're able to pull up the onX Hunt app on your phone, that's something I strongly recommend for this portion of the class. If you can follow along and kind of do what I do, that's a great way to learn, and it's going to help you retain the information more after the class. So let's get into it. This is the onX Hunt map. You can see my location by my blue and white dot in the center of my map there. I'm sitting at the onX headquarters here in Missoula, Montana. So if I zoom out a bit, you can see there we are in the middle of Missoula. And as I start to zoom in a little bit, you'll notice the farther I zoom in, the more information starts to show on my map. Before I get too far, I apologize if this is a little laggy on here. When we go from Zoom, to onX, the Zoom, there's a bit of a lag in the broadcast here. So I will try my best to keep, what I'm talking about to be what's showing on your screen there. But sometimes it does take a little bit for the screen to catch up to me here. So as I was saying, as I zoom in, I start to see more information on my map. Notably right now, I'm seeing some red boxes around buildings and around parcels with names inside of them. That's because I have my private lands layer turned on. So all of your layers live in the lower left-hand corner of my map screen. There's a button here that says Hunt Map Layers. When I tap on that, it opens up my layer menu here, and all of my layers are grouped into different collections or different folders. Okay, so you can see I have Montana listed, current conditions, land and access, roads, trails, and rec, and so on. We'll get into those in a bit. For right now, I'm going to open up my Montana layers. To open it up, all you have to do is tap on that collection, and it's going to expand my Montana layers folder. Now we have 9 different layers for Montana. Your state is going to look slightly different, unless of course you're in Montana, then it'll look the same. But every state's going to be slightly different depending on different types of programs and different types of data that each state has available. What every state will have, however, are private lands, government lands. Most states will have some variation of hunting districts or hunting zones, and then possible access. The big ones we're going to focus on here today are the private lands, the government lands, and the hunting districts. So let's talk private lands. If you look at the top half of my screen, I'm going to turn off the private lands layer just by hitting that green switch. Now you'll see there's no more landowner information there. This is something we hear from people on a fairly regular basis, where they will say, all my land ownership information's gone. You know, what's going on? I paid for this. Why am I not able to see it? 9 times out of 10, that layer just got turned off. So you can turn these layers on and off whenever you want. The private lands layer is one I almost never turn off. It doesn't really obscure my map very much. There are some layers we'll look at later that will obscure your map a bit. This one doesn't. I can see everything I need to see, right? I can see all the landowner names. And if I want to learn more about a certain parcel of land or a landowner, all I have to do is tap on that parcel. So right now I just tapped on the parcel where our office is located. It gives me the owner name, 0.6 LLC. So it might be an LLC. Most likely, if it's just a private property, it's going to be somebody's name or maybe a husband and wife's name. Sometimes it might be like a family trust or a partnership or something. But however that land is registered with the county tax assessor, that's what we show there. We give you the tax address, the county, and the acreage. So that tax address is wherever the landowner receives their mail, receives their taxes in the mail, right? To pay their property taxes. So that's useful if you're trying to get in touch with somebody. You know, first thing I would do, if this was hunting land I'm trying to get permission on, I'm gonna pull up the name and I'm probably gonna do a Google search. I'm gonna look in the white pages, try to get a phone number for somebody. If I'm not successful in doing that, I'm gonna go to the tax address and I'm gonna write a letter. This is a great time of year to send letters out to landowners if you're looking for hunting permission in the fall. You don't necessarily want to be knocking on a farmer's door opening day and seeing, hey, you know, can we hunt your land? Especially in the fall, busy time of year, folks are harvesting, they're out in the field. If you can send letters out to folks well beforehand and before they have a million people knocking on their door, it's not necessarily a secret, but that's what a lot of really successful permission askers do is they start this time of year and start sending letters out and knocking on doors. So that's one of my hot tips for you tonight. All right, so private lands, let's talk about government lands. I'm gonna zoom out. I'm gonna move my map a little bit to the east of town here. So government lands or public lands are all gonna be color coded. They're all gonna have this kind of colored filter over the top of them to help you identify those more easily. And if you've ever used like a paper surface map, we tried to match the color coding of that to those, like if you've ever gone to like a BLM office to get a surface map or something like that. If I go back into my map layers and turn my public lands, or excuse me, government lands layer off, you can see the difference is pretty stark as I toggle that on and off, right? But you might be saying, man, there's a bunch of different colors there. What do all those mean? If you don't know what something means on the map or you want more information, just like we did with private lands, just tap on it. That's one of the most important things I hope everybody gets from this class tonight. If you don't know what something is on the map, most of the time you can find more information by tapping on it. So I tapped on the green coloration here, and it tells me, that's Lolo National Forest. That's National Forest Service land there. All national forests and national grasslands are this green color here. Okay. If I go over to some blue, that's going to be state land. And as I zoom in a little bit, you can see the name starts showing in that parcel, state of Montana. So state lands are going to be blue color. BLM land is this yellow color right here. So that's Bureau of Land Management. If I zoom out and go up to the Flathead Reservation, tribal lands are this kind of brownish yellow color here. Go up to Glacier National Park. National parks are purple. Military installations are a pink color. Trying to think of other Fish and Wildlife Service refuges are kind of this brighter green here. So once you get into it, it becomes kind of second nature. You just know by looking at it. That's Forest Service, that's state. There's even some county land in here and city land. So City of Missoula. I think this might actually be University of Montana, public university. So it's listed under government lands there. But the point is, once you spend some more time in it, it's just going to become second nature. And that's another one of my kind of big tips from this class. It sounds simple. The more time you spend in the app, in this tool, the easier it's going to be. I liken it to getting a brand new bow and arrow or a new shotgun or rifle. You shouldn't be shooting that new bow or shotgun or rifle for the first time on opening day, right? You're going to want to practice with it, learn the ins and outs of it, learn how it functions well ahead of hunting season. Same thing with the onX app. Spend some time in it. The more you play around, the more you just press buttons, the better you're going to be. There's nothing in here you can break. There's nothing in here that you can turn on that can't be turned off and vice versa. So that's something I sometimes see with new folks. They have a little bit of trepidation and they're like, I don't know what all this stuff does. It's like, well, try it out, touch the buttons, turn everything on, turn everything off. That's the best way to learn, in my opinion. Let's go back into layers. I'm going to zoom out here first. Again, bottom left-hand corner, hunt map layers, tap on Montana. So we've talked about private lands, we've talked about government lands. Let's talk about hunting districts, because this is something that trips some folks up. Now in Montana, we break the state down into hunting districts. That's how they issue tags and that's how they do surveys and reporting and the biologists and everything. Most states have a system like this. I think Illinois might be the only one that doesn't, at least for big game, because they go by county. So you're not going to see these green boxes or green shapes on the map like I have here. But every state calls these something different. It might be hunt areas, deer permit areas, game management units, there's a number of different terms states have for these. They all basically mean the same thing. Where people get tripped up on these is that states will break their species down differently. So depending on your state like Montana, if you look over to the right-hand side where that green switch is, you see the number 17. We have 17 different hunting district sublayers. So if I tap on view options right below Montana hunting districts and expand this menu, you can see all of our different units there, from upland game, swan, spring and fall turkey, mountain lion, mountain goat, fisher, bison, antelope. You get the idea. Deer and elk is chosen by default here. And in most states, deer or big game or whatever the most popular pursuit is going to be what we have chosen by default. But you might need to change that. We hear from hunters a lot, especially with antelope in states like Montana and Wyoming, because they are different districts than deer and elk. So if I bring this menu down a bit again, I'm going to go out to, actually, I'm going to zoom out most of the way. So those are my deer and elk units right there. If I tap on antelope, you can see those units change. You can see there's not really any units west of the Continental Divide in Montana because there's not very many antelope this side of the Continental Divide. There's a few, but most of them are central and eastern part of the state. So if I was looking at this and I was thinking they were deer and elk units, I'd say, man, onX screwed this up. We get that call sometimes. They'll say, I'm looking at Game and Fish's website and I'm looking at yours and you guys have the numbers wrong. Not that we never get anything wrong, but every time I've talked to one of those customers, they've just had the wrong sublayer chosen. So make sure you have the right one selected for the species you're interested in hunting. Black bears season's coming up here. I might just turn that one on and leave it on for a while here. So double check those. Last state layer I want to talk about is our block management layer. So block management is our state's walk-in program or public access to private lands program. Again, most states in the union, I think we're nearing 30 states have a program similar to this. So private landowners will enroll their land or a portion of their land and open it up to hunters and sometimes anglers in exchange for, like a stipend or a payment from typically your state fish and game agency or Department of Natural Resources. What those look like on the map are red dots within a black border. So this, where it says Mount Deanstone on my map here, that's a block management area. It might be hard to see on your end, but it's got those red dots. And so this is private land, but they open it up and allow public recreational access there. If I want to find out more information, again, I just tap on it. Tells me who the owner is. Tells me the name of the area. And then if there are specific rules, we will link you to those rules on the state website. So you see there, it says area info, visit website. When applicable, we will send you to the state website because they are the source of truth, right? They administer the program. So whether you're in North Dakota and you're hunting plots land, or you're on walk-in hunting access in Kansas, or any of the other states that have a program like this, double check with the state, make sure you know all the rules before you go. State like Montana, we have a couple different block management types. We have type 1, which is what this area is, which is typically involves, there's a parking area with a sign-in box. You sign in, you put your name and vehicle info down. They might take some info as far as what you were hunting and, were you successful, which you fill out at the end, of course. And then there's type 2, which typically requires some sort of like reservation beforehand. You have to call the landowner and reserve certain days or certain times, things like that. So know before you go, but we make it a little bit easier for you to know by putting those links to those websites in this card here at the bottom of your screen. Okay, back into hunt map layers. I'm going to move down below Montana now. I'm going to talk about some of our other collections. Now, everybody with a paid membership has access to these other folders, current conditions, land and access, etc. These are all folders that contain nationwide data, but you don't need an elite membership for them. So that sometimes causes confusion. I totally understand why. Even if you have a premium one state membership, these current conditions folders, like active wildfire, it's going to show you wildfires across the country, even if you don't have, access to land ownership in those states. So let's say you've got a premium for Missouri, you can still see wildfires in Montana this summer. You don't have to have the elite membership for these layers. So active wildfire is one I always have turned on in current conditions. I'm gonna see if I can find a fire. There's not too many this time of year, as you might imagine, but here's one. I can see this kind of red cartoon flame icon on my map. And as I zoom in, a name is going to appear. Might have to hit the zoom just right. because there's other stuff competing for it. Anyway, usually a name will appear there. If I tap on it, again, tap on the icon, and it's going to give me the name of the fire. And this one I know is a prescription burn. They're burning like some slash piles here. It's got that RX designation on it, prescribed fire. You got a lot of that around the West this year, fuel reduction and things like that. What's important here and what will be important come peak wildfire season this summer are those two dates there for onX last checked and source updated. So we check our sources multiple times a day. I believe we do it 4 times a day. So we'll check every 6 hours, right? And we'll tell you when we last checked. So it was March 4th, which is today. We'll also tell you when the source last updated their data, because they don't always update as often as we check. Most of the time they don't. So they last updated on March 3rd. So this data is a day old. For a prescribed fire, not really a big deal, right? For a wildfire, if you're taking a look at it, you're saying, man, I wonder how this fire is moving, where it's going, how big is it? Is it contained? We'll put the containment information in there if it's not a prescribed fire like this. If it's true wildfire, it'll say 20% contained, 80%, etc. But like I said, our data sources don't always update every single day. So it might say onX last checked August 5th, but the source hasn't updated since August 1st, for example. So you know it's 4 days old. Likely something's changed in that fire. We don't know because we are not on the ground. We rely on our data sources to keep it updated, but at least it gives you a sense of, all right, hey, this was onX checked today and it was updated today. So this is pretty accurate information. Or onX checked, but the source hasn't updated in 10 days. Things have likely changed quite a bit. So it gives you a sense of that there. And again, like I said, this layer is available to everybody that has a paid membership. So even if you're just premium, you can still turn on the active wildfire layer. And that's another thing I hear from customers once in a while, and I understand the confusion 100%. Say, man, I know there's a fire burning nearby me, but I don't see the fire layer under Colorado. It's because it's not a state-specific layer. We'll show fires in Colorado, of course, but it's a nationwide layer, so that's why it's in that current conditions folder. There's a few other ones in here. We're not going to get into all of these. Like I said, turn them on, tap on the details. It'll tell you more information about it. Smoke forecast, drought data, temperature. This is a new one, the cell coverage. So this one's pretty cool. We've got kind of the 3 big providers, Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. It'll tell you where you can expect to have service and then what kind of service you can expect to have. So if I'm going into the Bob Marshall Wilderness, not a whole lot of service. There might be a few spots on mountaintops where I might get 4G. In town in Missoula, I'm pretty much going to get full coverage 5G here, right? And again, just like the hunting districts, we have different sub-layers here, so you can hit view options, and I can switch to AT&T, T-Mobile. If you're on a different carrier, I apologize. These are the ones we have the data for. I'm just going to go ahead and turn this back off because it does obscure my map. So even when I zoom in, everything's red, right? That's another thing we hear from customers sometimes is, what's this weird coloration on my map? Why does it look so funky? Again, it's a layer that's turned on. So if that ever happens to you, where you're like, something doesn't look right, why is there this coloration on my map? Go through your layers and try turning them off one at a time to see what is causing that coloration. Let's go down to land and access. There's a couple of ones here I want to highlight. Wilderness areas should be turned on by default. And it's going to give you, it should look somewhat like this. I'm in the Rattlesnake Wilderness, which is Forest Service land. So it has that green coloration, but it also has these kind of gray hash marks on it. That's going to show you the federally designated wilderness, big W wilderness, right? So those non-motorized areas like the Rattlesnake Wilderness, or, very famously the Bob Marshall Complex, kind of west of town from us here. So that's when I turn on. You can certainly turn it off if you want. I just like to know where those boundaries are. Down below wilderness areas is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service hunt areas. This is another one I find super helpful. So this is a wildlife refuge just south of Missoula here that does allow some hunting. They allow waterfowl hunting in certain areas on certain days, and they allow archery hunting for whitetails in certain areas. So they have some rules that are kind of above and beyond what your typical fish, wildlife, and parks rules are. They have different zones here. You can see there's the waterfowl zone. They have some no hunting areas. And then there's the archery zone, and they're all labeled there. If I turn this layer off, it's still showing the government lands layer, but I'm not able to see those zones as easily or at all, right? Again, if you want to learn more information, if you're interested in hunting a refuge, they do offer some phenomenal opportunities for people, but they do have their own sets of rules typically. So go ahead and tap on it, scroll down, hit that visit website for more info because they have different rules. Some refuges only allow hunting on certain days of the week, or they only allow waterfowl hunting on certain days of the week. Or like this refuge, for example, they have set blinds and you have to hunt in one of those kind of predetermined blinds. And it's first come, first serve. You have to go to a kiosk and you kind of check in and out. All that information's on the website there. So again, know before you go, check all that information out so that you're staying on the right side of the law and everything. Again, few more in land and access here that are just beyond the scope of this class. Take a look at them and see what you think. And if you do have questions, always feel free to email us. We're going to move on and talk about roads, trails, and rec. These are very helpful layers that not enough people use, in my opinion. So I'm going to turn them all off right now, just so you can see what my map looks like. So this is Mount Sentinel. If you've ever been to Missoula, that's where the M Trail is. Very popular, just recreational hiking area near town here. But I can't really see any of those hiking trails right now, right? So when I turn on my trails layer, now I start to see them. They're the black and white, look kind of like train tracks almost. I can see all of those trails, but there's more information to be learned here. I'm going to turn on the trail slope layer. Now that is going to color code those trails based on how steep they are. Red being the steepest, green being the flattest. So you can take a look at some of those trails and kind of predetermine, hey, that one that's red the entire time, I might not want to hike that one right now. You might say, that looks like an awful lot of work to get into this hunting area. I might choose a different route. On the other hand, you might say, man, I'm in good shape. I enjoy hiking. I'm going to take that route because I know it's going to keep some other people out of there, right? So just another piece of information to help you when you're determining where you're going to hunt, where you're going to go. You can also turn on trail mileages. That's going to it's kind of tough to see over Zoom like this, but small numbers on here showing you the distance between two sections of trail. So there's some here that say 0.1 miles, 0.5, 0.6. Another layer I always have turned on is the recreation sites. So these are going to be just little square icons, like this one that says TH for a trailhead. You're going to have them for fishing access sites and water access sites, old mines, campgrounds, picnic areas, things like that are going to be on your recreation sites. So useful for finding any of that information. We even have places you can buy a license in there, and there's even still some breweries in there, if I remember correctly. Yep, breweries and distilleries for your post hunt refreshment are in there as well. Last one I want to talk about in this folder is this motorized roads and trails. You have to scroll down to find it, but this one is an underrated layer. As I turn it on, you can see those purple and white lines showing up on my map. Now, these are going to be primarily on public land, especially Forest Service has a lot of these mapped out. So whether you're near a national forest or national grassland, You've probably got some of these showing. We do have some of this data for BLM and state land as well, but it's primarily Forest Service administered lands. So these are going to be, just like the name says, motorized roads and trails. Trails and roads you can take a motor vehicle on. You'll see I have other lines on my map that aren't purple and white. These white dashed and dotted lines, those are also roads, but they're not maintained like the main roads, like those purple and white ones are. So those purple roads are typically wider. These roads in this area, at least most of them, you can get, 2 cars down. You could pass somebody on. Some of these other white ones, not so much. And a lot of these non, they may allow motorized use, but they're not included in this data set because they're not maintained as much. A lot of these, especially here in Western Montana, Northern Idaho, Washington, Oregon, they are old logging roads where the logging company punched a road in to be able to get the logs out. And then when they're done logging, those roads typically aren't maintained. So they're still great to hike on. I like walking them for hunting grouse. If I'm packing an animal out and I say, hey, we can drop 100 feet and get on this old closed road, still easier walking than side hilling, right? But there might be 15-foot tall spruce trees on them. So I'm not driving my pickup truck down them. So that's why those roads are still on the map, even though they might not be, drivable with a passenger car, still useful if you're hunting in those areas. But these main ones here do receive maintenance. If a tree falls, eventually it's going to get cleared. If there's a washout, things like that, they get maintained. It is important to learn more about these roads though, because a lot of them have width restrictions and seasonal closures. So if I tap on this road and scroll down, it's going to give me the name of the road, Tura South, the road ID number. And then what's really important to me here is the accessible by and the open dates. So accessible by, overland, high clearance, 4x4, side-by-side, ATV, dirt bike. That means I can drive my pickup truck down it. If it says overland, that typically means passenger vehicles. There's not a width restriction. Some of these will say ATV and dirt bike, meaning it typically would have like a 50-inch width restriction. So you can't take a larger side-by-side. It's more of those smaller side-by-sides, ATVs, dirt bikes. If it says overland, I drive a GMC pickup, it's going to be okay on this road. If it doesn't say overland, but it says high clearance 4x4, there's no width restriction on the road. You can take a Jeep down it, but those roads are typically going to be a little bit rougher. And they probably will at some point require you to have some sort of kind of aftermarket gear, right? A lift kit, bigger tires, maybe a winch, things like that. They're still legal for a passenger car, but you might need something that's a little bit more off-road capable for those. Then the second thing that's really important here I mentioned is the open dates. This road here, you'll see closes it's only open between May 16th and October 14th. So right now, let's say there wasn't a pile of snow in the mountains. If I tried to go up there, I'd be met with a locked gate. Know before you go. Nobody wants to drive all the way out and plan on doing a hunt or something and get to a locked gate. Check the dates. In Montana, a lot of these are closed. They'll start closing different sections down during hunting season. So sometimes some will close at the onset of archery season. Then another subset will close right before rifle season starts. Then another set will close right after rifle season ends. They do that and they'll keep it closed until some point in the spring for wintering herds, just so that animals have a spot to get away during the winter, during the stressful time of year. And then a lot of times they'll keep roads closed for elk calving areas and deer fawning areas so that they have a spot to, during those vulnerable first couple weeks of the fawns and calves' lives where they can raise them and get them up and going without having to worry about, cars and dirt bikes and everything driving by and disturbing them. So double check those dates before you go, and maybe save yourself a trip so you don't have to turn around. All right, where are we at for time? 6:10 already my time. That's going to be about it for these different layer collections right now. like I said, there's a ton of layers in here. There's a lot of information to learn. It's just a bit beyond the scope of this 101 here. What I do want to do before we move on from layers is show you how to turn on additional states. So if you have that elite membership and you want to turn on multiple states, all you have to do is scroll down in this map layers menu. I have Montana turned on, so it's listed at the top, and then they're going to be listed alphabetically. Also, Canada is in there if you're looking to turn on Canada. Well, let's say I wanted to turn on New Hampshire. Scroll down to New Hampshire, tap on it. Now I see it listed there under Montana. I have my New Hampshire layers available to me there. So if I zoom out of my map, zoom out a bunch, go over to New Hampshire. As I zoom in, now I can start to see that information showing there. So that's how you turn additional states on. You can also turn them off that way just by tapping the green button and it goes away. I typically never have more than 2, maybe 3 states turned on at once. I'll do that if I'm making a road trip in the fall, like this past fall. I hunted Montana and then North Dakota on my way to Minnesota for our family deer camp. So I had all 3 of those states turned on. This time of year when I'm applying for other states, I'm gonna do my Colorado application one of these days. I'll have Montana and Colorado turned on. Besides that, I don't recommend having multiple states turned on if you can help it. We have seen some performance degradation once you get above 5 states turned on. It's just a lot of data and the app will still work. It'll just kind of slow it down a little bit. So you're probably not going to be looking at 5 states at once anyways. So I recommend just having the 1 or 2 states that you need on at a time and then turning the other ones off. Okay, let's move to offline maps. So in a lot of Montana and a lot of the country and a lot of places we hunt, there's no cell service, right? That's gradually changing, both for the good and the bad. Sometimes I like being in an area where there's no cell service, right? But there's quite a few of those areas. I mean, even sometimes in the middle of Missoula here, I have trouble getting phone calls out. So what do you do if you still want to use the onX app? You have to utilize offline maps. In the lower left-hand corner, below that Hunt Map Layers button, there's a button that says Offline Maps. I'm going to tap on that. And that's going to bring up a menu here. Now, yours might look a little bit different. We did a recent change where this new offline map button just got moved a little bit. So if yours only shows new offline map on like the left side of your screen, that's okay. We're kind of in the midst of that update right now. So if I want to save a new map, first thing I got to do is move my map to the area I want to hunt. Let's just say I'm going to go right over here, around the Missouri River, kind of in the Breaks CMR refuge area. Okay, that's the area I'm going to go. There's not great cell service out there. I can tell you that right now, at least in a lot of places I've been. I'm going to tap New Offline Map. Now this is going to bring up this screen with this box around it. That box is going to be the extent of my offline map. So whatever's inside of that is going to be available for offline use. If I zoom out a bit, you can see that's the biggest I can make this map. 34 miles, call it, by 47. Your numbers are going to be a little bit different depending on your device. It just depends on the screen kind of ratio, the length and width. So everyone's going to be a little bit different. If your numbers don't match mine, that's fine. Don't worry about it. From here, I can change the detail and size of my map. So medium detail is selected by default. What does detail mean? That is referring to the crispness or the resolution of your imagery. So no matter what size map you save, you're going to get your layers saved. So your government lands, your private lands, your hunting districts, your recreation sites, etc. What I recommend is any layers you're going to want to use when you're offline, have those turned on when you're saving your map. Just make the map look like you want it to look like before you save, because if you have, like for example, if I would save a map in Wisconsin without turning on Wisconsin as a state, I'm not going to have those layers available to me. So I've got the map, I've got the layers on that I want to have turned on. Medium detail is going to be what I recommend for most folks hunting the West most of the time. It's pretty good imagery resolution, but it's not as crisp as the high detail. Now, if I were hunting, not all the time, depending what I'm hunting, but when I hunt deer in northern Minnesota, if I was especially deer hunting, a lot of turkey hunting east of the Rockies, where you don't quite have as big of tracts of public land generally. I mean, I hunt northern Minnesota. There's some big national forests and everything there. But I'm also, when I go to Minnesota, I'm deer hunting. We've got our tree stand set. We pretty much know where we're going to be, right? I don't need a big map because I'm not going to be traveling a lot of area. I use, when I deer hunt, family deer camp in Minnesota, I use the high detail map because it's a smaller map. It doesn't take up as much space on my phone, and that's really what I need. When I'm hunting in Montana, most of the time I use a medium-sized map because whether I'm hunting upland birds or antelope or deer, bear, I might be traveling around quite a bit. I might be moving to different areas throughout the state. And if that's you and you're not in the West, this still applies, right? And the trade-off with the bigger your map, the trade-off is that you have lower imagery resolution. I have not found that to be a detriment personally on these medium detail maps. I can never recall, telling myself, man, if I would have had a little bit crisper imagery, I would have gotten that buck or I'd have gotten that bull. It's just not really a detriment to me. Now, if I go to a low detail map, this is pretty big size, and this is going to have imagery that's not very crisp. I use these, I don't use them all that often anymore. But there was a time when I used them as a backup quite a bit, where let's say I'm going to eastern Montana and I'm hunting sharp-tailed grouse and I have certain areas I know I want to hunt, and I save all of those medium detail maps and I hunt a couple days and man, there's just not the birds there that I thought there was going to be. We're going to have to go to some new spots. If I don't have a map saved, I might not know where the boundaries are, right? So if I save a few of my medium detail maps and find out, not really what I need, at least I have this low resolution one as a backup. And I can save, I could save a few of these. If I stacked them next to each other, you can kind of get a sense. And a handful of them, I could save half the state. So you're still going to see your layers. You're still going to see the property ownership and all that, but the imagery resolution just isn't quite there compared to the smaller maps. So again, 99% of the time, I'm using the medium and high resolution. And when I'm in Montana, I use the medium. When I'm hunting in Minnesota, a lot of times I'm using the high resolution ones. So what does this look like? Let's zoom in again. And I'm still just using my one finger here to move this map around to get it set where I want it. I can zoom in and out a little bit still just to get it set. I'm going to pull this menu up. I recommend naming your offline maps. If you leave this just generic timestamp there, once you have 20, 30, 40 maps saved, it's not going to mean anything to you, right? So since this is out on the CMR refuge area, that's what I'm going to name it. Whatever you name your maps is up to you. There's no real right or wrong way. The only wrong way is not giving them custom names. Myself, I'll typically do it off of like a nearby town, a certain hunting district, a river or a creek drainage that I'm hunting, something like that. Or in Montana, our state is broken up into 7 regions, and I might save a whole bunch of them in region 3, and I'll name them all region 3 maps just so I know that I have offline maps saved there. Here I'm going to know I have one saved on the CMR refuge. Hit the save button. That's going to start downloading. It's listed at the top there. It's going to count down and show me the percentage as we go. It's got a green outline around it. You can see it's kind of faint right now. Once this map is downloaded successfully, that will turn to a bright green box, sort of like this one I have here. That's how you know where you have maps saved and where you don't. And it's also useful if you want to save a bigger area than what you're allowed with one map. You can stitch these together or create a grid. Let me show you an example. So I'll just use this one here. Let's say I want a bigger area than just that box that's currently downloading. Just repeat the process. Go into offline maps, save a new map. Now I can kind of line these up, right? Rename it. And you can double up on names. I do that quite often. Not a big deal. And hit save. So now that one's going to download as well. So now I have a bigger area that's saved here. And when you're going offline, you don't have to select these maps. That's another question we sometimes get as well. How do I pull that map up? How do I make sure it loads that map? There's really nothing you have to do when you're out in that area. When you don't have service, the app's should automatically go into offline mode and recognize, hey, there's no cell service here, there's no internet service. We need to use these offline maps, and it'll load them up automatically for you. When you're offline, you're still able to do just about everything you can do online. You can see your location, of course. Your GPS receiver in your device, in your phone or tablet, doesn't run off the cell network. It runs off the same GPS network that a handheld GPS does, similar to like a Garmin GPS, for example. So you're still able to see your location. You're able to mark waypoints. You're able to track yourself. And those are things we'll show you how to do here in a little bit. You're able to do all of that so you can still, navigate and get yourself, make sure you're not trespassing and get yourself back out safely and all of that. Pro tip for everybody, when you don't have service, I highly recommend putting your phone into airplane mode. Airplane mode is going to save your battery life considerably. So when you're out in the field, whether you have no service at all, or if it's kind of spotty, if you're in and out of service, or it's maybe 1 or 2 bars, what's going to drain your phone's battery the fastest is if it's always searching for a signal. Searching for signal and your screen are really going to be 2 of the biggest draws on your battery. So if you put your phone into airplane mode, it's not searching for signal anymore. It's not connected to the cell network. Of course, you're not able to send or receive text messages or phone calls. To me, that's a benefit of going out hunting quite often, right? So when I'm out, I put it in airplane mode, and I typically can get a whole day plus out of my phone. If I was a true backpack hunter, which I typically am not, I'm kind of a day hunter. I'm back to the truck or back to my house every night so I can charge my phone up. But we've had people here that will go into the woods for a week hunt, and they can get a couple days out of their phone if they leave it on airplane mode and are kind of judicious with how often they pull their screen up. Of course, cold weather is going to zap it more. So you might have to put it in an inside pocket or put it like one of those hand warmers in there. And I do also always carry a external power bank. They're pretty ubiquitous at this point. I have one by Dark Energy that I really like. Also have one by Otter, Mophie. There's all kinds of Goal Zero. There's all kinds of different brands that make them. You can get them at a lot of grocery stores and gas stations now. So I do recommend carrying one of those to at least get yourself an extra charge, just in case, something would happen or your phone battery drains a little quicker. It's a pretty small weight penalty to have that kind of insurance policy for you. All right. Couple more things on offline maps. You'll notice some of these say update available, like this one I titled Red Lodge. If I tap on the name, it brings me to that map. Now, what that means, that update available, means something has changed on this map. Some data has changed since I downloaded it. Most typically, that's going to be private land ownership information. The house has been bought and sold. To update that is a pretty easy process. All you have to do is tap that green circle with the check mark. That's going to start that update process. It's important to note that these maps will still work for you when they say update available. I remember talking to somebody one time, and they say, oh man, my onX screwed me. I was driving out hunting and it said update available, so my map wasn't going to work. So I had to pull over and find a McDonald's and get Wi-Fi to update it. It'll still work if it says update available. There's just something that's out of date in that area. Most of the time, that's not going to be fatal. If it's Saturday morning and you're driving out turkey hunting and you see update available, don't sweat it. Go hunting. Just update it when you get the chance. Typically, depending on your state, there might be an update available almost every day, depending on how often we update your property ownership information. Some states update their data more often than others, and we try to match that update schedule. So a state like Montana, it's pretty much every week I have an update available. Do I update all my maps every week? I don't, especially this time of year. We've got 5 weeks, 6 weeks until turkey and bear season opens here. So I'm probably not going to worry about updating them until April. During the fall hunting season, I do it once a week, twice a week. Of course, I work at onX, so it's not a problem for me to just pull my phone out, hit update, and update all these maps. If you want to update all of them at once, in the top right corner of this offline maps menu, so kind of midway up my screen here, to the right, those 3 dots I'm going to tap on. I can hit update all maps, and that will just queue them up. So it'll automatically go from one to the other. That's an option for you. If you only want to update certain ones, do what I just showed you there by tapping on the green circle. Couple of these maps don't have green circles on them. So this one titled Northwest Montana, I'm going to tap on. And you'll notice this doesn't have a green box around it. It's got a red and white box around it. That means that this map is not downloaded on this device. This can happen a couple of different ways. For one, I'm going to switch over to this Bob Marshall map just to show you how this works. Let's say every summer I take a hiking trip into the Bob Marshall Wilderness and do some fishing and camping, but I do that for 1 week a year. I don't need this map the other 51 weeks out of the year. So I might want to offload it to save space on my device. To offload it or unload it, I can tap on those ellipses to the right of where it says Bob Marshall and hit remove from device. That will retain the boundary of the map, but all the map data, all the offline map data has been deleted there. So it frees up some space. Why might you want to do this? Well, I mentioned earlier, I do this trip every summer. I'm going to want to download this map again. So instead of having to go through all the steps that I just demonstrated of hitting save new map and all that, I have the outline here. I just have to re-download the data. All I have to do is tap that downward facing arrow, and that will download that map. Now I have other ones being downloaded right now. So once those finish, this one will queue up and start downloading. Another way you could get into this scenario where you have these red and white kind of barber pole looking maps here. If you get a new phone is the most common way. So if you have to get a new device, you get yourself a new phone, your onX account will transfer over. You don't have to pay for it again or anything like that. You'll just get your new phone, get it all set up, re-download the onX Hunt app on your new phone, type in your email address and password, same one you used on your previous device. If you don't remember your password, you'll have an opportunity to reset it there. But once you log in, you'll notice that your offline maps aren't there anymore. You'll have a bunch of these boundaries. That's because there's no way for us to transfer that data over automatically when you re-log into that new device. So you'll just have to go through, like I showed there, and re-download those offline maps. So double check that, before you go out. Green means go. If you've got green boxes, that map's going to work for you. If you have the red and white, you do need to download them for them to be available when you're offline. Okay. We are at about an hour here, so I'm going to try to be as efficient with the remaining portions of the presentation here. Closing out of offline maps, I'm going to bring the map back to my location and zoom in just so I can show you a few of the map tools. So map tools is accessible by going to that bottom toolbar of your map. It's the one in the middle. It has looks like a Swiss Army knife icon on top of it. Tap on that. You've got 8 tools available to you. We're not going to be able to go over every single tool. We're going to focus primarily on waypoints because that's the most commonly used map tool here. Waypoints are just a pin you put in the map that you want to remember for later. There's a couple different ways you can do that. The first is by tapping this button that says Add Waypoint. that is going to place a waypoint in the center of my screen. That may or may not be where I want it to be. Let's pretend that it's not, because most of the time it isn't exactly where I want it to be, right? I'm going to zoom in a little bit just to make this a little bit easier to see. And now all I'm going to do if I want to relocate this waypoint is tap on my map. So I'm just tapping it with my finger right now. And everywhere I tap, that waypoint's going to jump to. So if you want to be real specific, if I want to put it on this street corner, I'm going to zoom in and tap on it. Now I have my waypoint there. Much like offline maps, I highly, highly recommend customizing your waypoints. That's one of the biggest things I can tell you that you will thank yourself for in the future. The onX Hunt app is kind of all about helping you be more efficient when you're outside, helping you make the most of your limited time in the outdoors. So you can imagine if you start marking waypoints and they're all red X's with this generic waypoint name, at a certain point, you're going to forget what they mean. I did this. A lot of people do this. I got to the point where I had like 100 and some waypoints, and I remembered what some of them were, but a lot of them were like, man, what did I mark there? What was that? Do I have, did I flush a pheasant there? Was there a buck rub there? Did I see a cool rock? I have no idea. So help your future self out. It does take a little bit of time, but you will thank yourself for it. So first things first, rename the waypoint. This timestamp means nothing to me. Since this is on the street corner, I'm just going to name this one street corner. It might be name my tree stands, or I saw an elk wallow, or flushed a grouse, or whatever. Street corner. Then change the icon. So instead of it being the X, we have like 90 different options for you here for you to customize. We don't have every single thing you might want to mark, but we've got a lot. Whether it's different species, bobcat, antelope, moose, quail, sheep. We even have Sasquatch in there. Mineral site, tree stand, water source, trail, truck, etc. I'm going to mark this one Sasquatch because I think the Sasquatch icon's a little funny. And then I'm going to change the color as well. This is one of my hot tips for folks when they ask me like, man, what's like an inside tip? Color code your waypoints. And there's a ton of different ways to color code it. Do what makes sense for you. Personally, I'm a generalist hunter. I'm blessed to live in Western Montana where I can choose to hunt. We have turkeys and bears in the spring, upland game, waterfowl, elk, deer, antelope. It's a great spot. So I will color code my waypoints based on the species that they pertain to. So all my deer icons are one color, my elk icons are another, turkey's a third color, etc. So that when I'm zoomed out on my map on my personal account, I have like 1,400 waypoints, but I know at a glance what those colors mean. So I know those are turkey waypoints, those are elk waypoints, those are fishing spots, those are, where I flushed pheasants. Some people will do it that way. Some people will do it by year. And they'll say, all right, 2025 is going to be all purple waypoints. And 2026 is then going to be green. And 27 is going to be blue. A lot of folks do that so they can see change over a year. When I was still living in Minnesota before I worked at onX, I mostly hunted white-tailed deer at the time. Wasn't really hunting much else. So I would have my tree stands one color, and buck rubs would be another color, and water sources would be another color, right? So whatever makes sense for you. If you've got a hunting lease and you're primarily hunting whitetails on it, you could have sign, scrapes one color, rubs one color, tree stands a different color, a spot where you need to do some work, a different color. You get the idea, right? Choose that different color. And then once you kind of develop a system, it just becomes second nature, So I've been doing mine for 5-6 years now, my color coding out here, and I just know automatically what those colors mean. I'm going to hit the save button. Now I can see my waypoint here. Okay. So that's one way to mark a waypoint. The second most common, or maybe the most common, is by going into the tool menu here and hitting Mark My Location. That is going to put a waypoint where you are located. This is what I use when I'm out in the field most of the time because I want to mark where I park the truck. I kind of have an order of operations I go through when I go out to hunt an area to try to stay safe. If I'm going to a new spot, especially, I'll park my truck, mark my location, and I'll change this icon. I'm going to edit it. So let me back up. I should have explained that. My apologies. This is just going to drop the red X. If I want to go edit it, I have to tap on that waypoint. It's going to pull up this menu, lower left-hand corner. I'm going to hit edit. And then now I can change, I can customize it like I just showed you. If I could type would be helpful. Truck. I'm going to select the truck icon here. I'm going to make this one white. So now I know where my truck's parked when I need to get back to it at the end of the hunt. I'll use this to mark tree stands and duck blinds when I'm standing there when I first, set up a tree stand or something. I'll use it to mark buck rubs and elk wallows. A lot of times when I'm successful, I love to mark, where the elk died, where the deer died. And then you can add pictures to it as well. I'm not going to go into adding pictures. It's just a bit beyond a 101, and I don't have any pictures on this company iPad here anyways. But I love adding pictures to my waypoint icons, whether it's a rub or a wallow, so I can kind of remember, what it looked like on a given date. I also use it a little bit like a journal. I'll take my grip and grin picture of me with my deer and attach it to that waypoint. And you can take notes in there, and I'll put some notes in there of, opening day, 8 a.m., shot it at 50 yards with my 270, whatever. And it's kind of fun just to go back and scroll through those and look at the pictures and kind of remember, that hunt. It's almost like a photo album digitally, right? So that's mark my location. Another way to mark a waypoint, I'm just going to move my map away so there's nothing clogging up the map. One way to mark a waypoint is just by doing a long press. So if you hold your finger down on the map for a couple seconds, like I'm going to do right here on this strip mall, a waypoint's going to show up. So that's the way I like to do it if I'm marking a spot that's not where I am. I just hold my finger down on it, and then I can go through and edit it. Sometimes I do this by mistake, right? It's easy when you're panning the map to just kind of forget and leave your finger down. That happens, no big deal. If you don't want to save that waypoint, in the upper left-hand corner, there's a button that says cancel. That's going to remove that waypoint. If I do want to delete a waypoint entirely, same process as editing it. I'm going to tap on my Sasquatch here. I can tap edit and then hit that delete button that's down at the bottom. I can also, after I tap on it, if I go all the way to the right along the bottom there, there's a red button that says delete. If you're on a phone with a smaller screen, you might have to scroll over because it just gets cut off with the small screen size. But that delete button, if you scroll all the way over, tap delete, it'll ask you to confirm, and then it's gone. So that's how you can do that. Couple other map tools real quickly here. If I go back into my tools menu, there's the line distance tool. I'm going to tap on that, and that is going to, I'm going to zoom out because the town kind of clogs this up. It's hard to see. Get out to some public land here. So that's going to put that crosshairs on my map here. And then I'm going to use this drop point button on the left-hand side of my screen. That's where I'll start my line. Then I can run over here, hit drop point. Now I've got this line. I can add more segments to it if I want. You can add as many as you'd like. Again, I'm not going to do it right now in the interest of time, but give it a name. You can change the color. You can change the style. You can make it a dashed line if you want. You can make it thicker and then hit save. And what's cool, once you save that line, it's going to give you an elevation profile. So if you're wanting to know, hey, if I walk along this line, what am I going to have to do elevation wise? It's giving you that up and down there. Then you can see I'm just dragging my finger across. It's showing where I am and what the elevation is. Of course, it gives me the distance, 1.06 miles, and elevation gained and lost there. So that's the line distance tool, useful for measuring distance. Some people will use it to measure like the perimeter of their land if they're putting up a fence or something. Similar to the line distance is the area shape. So upper right-hand icon in my map tools menu here, area shape functions very much like line distance. I've got my crosshairs. I can start dropping points, but this is going to create a closed polygon here. So it's going to give me the acreage once I save it and the perimeter here. And again, you can customize these. You can change the name. You can change the color. A lot of folks will use these, especially on private lands if they're managing their land. This is the time of year, especially in the Southeast. We just did a class on prescribed fire. If you're doing prescribed burns, in a lot of spots, people will burn kind of like a third of their land every year. So they're on like a 3-year rotation. So they will mark out their different plots and they'll say, all right, we're burning these 3 plots this year. These were burned last year. These were burning next year. And they have them all, different colors. Same thing with food plots. If you're planting food plots, whether they be for deer or turkeys or quail or whatever, you can just drag around and highlight that area of the map where you have soybeans planted or you've got brassicas or cereal grains or whatever. Give it a different color so you know this is where my soybeans are, this is where the corn is, this is where turnips are, whatever you have planted. And then it also helps you estimate acreage. So, this is how much fertilizer I need to buy. This is how much seed. This is how much herbicide, whatever you need there. Gives you a pretty good, this is my acreage and my perimeter. All right, moving on from tools here. Let's go over to the tracker. I'm going to move back to my location here. And now the tracker is another one of those tools that, first and foremost, it's a safety thing, but it also has applications to help you be more successful. So lower right-hand corner, button that says tracker. I'm going to tap on that, then hit the start button. And you notice my blue dot turned red. That tells you the tracker's running. I'm not moving anywhere right now. I'm sitting in an office building. If I was moving, you would see my dot move across the map, and then you would see a breadcrumb trail, a dashed line behind me everywhere I walked, or if I was driving everywhere I drove. So again, I mentioned earlier kind of my order of operations when I set out for a hunt. I park the truck, I get all my gear ready. Before I leave, I mark the truck, mark that location, then I start a track so that I can see everywhere I walked that day or that hunt. Useful, of course, safety-wise for getting my way back. But sometimes it's just fun to see, hey, I did 9 miles today or however far you walked. Also useful for a lot of hunting specific, I'm struggling for a word here, but a lot of hunting specific applications. So when I take my bird dog out and we go chasing grouse, a lot of times I like to track myself to see where I walk. Did I hit all of the different covers I wanted to hit? Pheasant hunting. Hey, did I cover this field? Did I cover all the spots where, all the different cattail sloughs where pheasants might be hanging out? That's one thing. I also will run tracks in and out of deer stands. So when a lot of our deer stands where my family hunts in northern Minnesota, we're able to maybe drive a 4-wheeler to a certain distance, and then we've got to walk the last couple hundred yards or whatever it is to the stand. I'll have the tracker running so that in the dark I can find my way back out without necessarily having to use a flashlight, and we don't have to hang a bunch of flagging tape or those reflective tacks and things people use. I can just rely on my onX. It's nice walking in the morning. I might not have to turn my flashlight on or my headlamp. I do use a green or a red one. They say it doesn't spook game, but I know not having a flashlight for sure isn't going to spook as much game, right? Also nice if you have a new buddy who's new to your camp and, hey, you're going to go sit this tree stand. Here's the route to walk in, especially if you have a specific way to walk in so that they don't go through a swamp or don't go upwind of a bedding area, things like that. It's also nice, out west here, I killed an elk last year. I had to track into where I was from the truck to where I killed that elk. So when I called for help, I said, I'm going to share you the waypoint of where the truck's parked. I'm going to share you the waypoint of where I am, and I'm going to share you my track. So they knew where to drive the truck. They knew exactly the best route to go in to find me, and they were able to do it, the shortest way possible. I'm going to stop my track here. If I had moved, it would give me the option to save this. I didn't, of course, so I'm just going to hit delete. But if you had moved, it's going to give you those stats you see there, your distance, your speed, and your elevation. Now, I mentioned sharing a minute ago. Here's how you can share these markups with somebody else. So let's say this is where I parked and I want to share that with somebody. I'm going to tap on the waypoint. I'm going to tap share. It's along the bottom left-hand corner. And I have two options here, share with a link or share nearby. Share with a link is what you're going to do most of the time for most people. If I hit next, now that's going to open up this window here where if I was on a phone, my text message app would be an option here. I'm on a tablet that doesn't have, a SIM card or anything, so it's not an option. But what this is going to do is it's going to just generate a link that you can text to somebody or email or Facebook message or Slack or whatever. Most of the time it's going to be a text message. You can text that to your friend, to your significant other, to whoever. They'll receive a text message, says, Jack wants to share a waypoint with you. They'll click on it. It will open up their onX Hunt app and ask them if they want to add that waypoint to their map. They can choose yes or no. They choose yes, it's going to be added there. And the nice thing is, since it's my waypoint, I control it. They can't edit it. They can't send it to anybody else. It's kind of like if you get shared a Google Doc and it's view only, it's a view only waypoint, right? So they're not able to make any changes to it. All they can do is view it, click on it to get the information, or delete it. If the recipient, meaning the person I'm sending the waypoint to, doesn't have an onX account, that's okay. They can still receive that share. So let's say I want to send, I'll use an example, and this is something I recommend everybody do. If you're a solo hunter like me especially, tell people where you're going, right? It's a safety thing. So let's say I have a friend or significant other. I'm going out hunting and say, hey, I'm going to share you a waypoint of where I plan to hunt. If you don't hear from me, if I'm not back by 9 o'clock, that's where you need to start the search, right? So at least the search and rescue knows where to start. That's huge. If they don't have onX, when I send them that text message and they click on the link to accept that share, it's going to open up the App Store or the Google Play Store, prompt them to download onX. You can create a free account. Download's free. The account's free. Once they have the app downloaded and they're logged in, then they can receive that share. Okay, so, we hear from married folks quite a bit. Say, hey, my wife doesn't really need an account, but she likes to know where I am. That's great. She can have the free version, share the waypoint, so then they know where you plan to hunt that day. Process is the same if you want to share a track with somebody or if you want to share a line distance or an area shape. You just tap on it and go through that share, that flow there. Okay, let's talk about location and compass mode. If you're looking at the map and you're saying, I don't see myself, how do I get the map back to where I am so I can see my dot? All you need to do is tap the location button in the lower right-hand corner. The location button looks like a crosshair or a wagon wheel. So bottom right corner, I'm going to tap that button. It swings the map back to my location. If I tap it one more time, now I'm going to go into what a lot of folks call like a line of sight or heads up mode. It's going to have, let me delete this waypoint here because it's kind of tough to see. There we go. it's going to have a blue cone that extends out from my dot, called like a sight cone. As I move my tablet, if you see on my video screen here, I'm just twisting, I'm spinning the tablet around. The map is going to move with me. So instead of north being oriented up, like the map defaults to, whatever direction I'm facing is oriented up now. And if you go to the upper right-hand corner, you see my compass. It's kind of moving around, telling me what direction I'm facing. So this is a question we get from folks. A lot of people don't know this feature exists. All you have to do is tap your location button twice to get into this mode. So super nice when I'm hiking down a trail and I need to know what fork to take. Maybe I'm riding in a car and we see a herd of elk. Hey, is that on public or private? I can pull this up real quick and see. All right, it's on the right-hand side. Yep, that's public. Nope, that's private, whatever. To get out of this, you just tap your location button one more time. And now that location button has changed. When I'm in this mode, it looks like a triangle or an arrow. Just tap it again. Tap my compass at the top. It's going to swing me back around. Okay, let's talk about compass mode. This is a fairly new feature. So if I, one more time, tap my location button twice, now you'll notice in the lower right-hand corner, I have 3 icons there now. The top one looks like a compass. If I tap on that, now I'm in compass mode. So I have this dotted line that extends from my location dot. I have a compass heading at the top, so I can kind of see if I wanted to get my degrees, I can get that. But where this is really powerful is when we go into rangefinder mode. So again, lower right-hand corner, I don't have that compass button anymore, but I have one that looks like a handheld rangefinder. I'm going to tap on that. It's turned red now, or orange, as has the bottom half of my line coming off of my location. So what this does, this feature allows me to remotely drop waypoints with some pretty good precision. I use the example a couple hunting seasons ago. I was hunting mule deer in kind of some coulee, creek bottom type country and spotted a bedded buck. I didn't have a shot at him. I needed to get closer. So I ended up kind of stalking a little bit closer. I got to within 270 yards. I was comfortable making that shot, was able to lay prone, nice solid rest. The buck was laying down and I needed to wait for him to stand up. I just didn't have an ethical shot the way he was laying. While I was laying there, I laid for like an hour and 20 minutes, if I remember correctly. What I did was I used my rangefinder, ranged him a bunch, 270, 272, 271, like pretty good range, right? I pulled up my phone. I went into compass mode and rangefinder mode like this, pointed my phone at him, moved this line. I'm just touching this red line with my finger, just pulling it up to 270 yards. And tapping the waypoint icon. Now I had a waypoint exactly where he was laying down. Once the buck eventually stood up, I shot him. He went over the rise and out of sight, but I knew exactly where to start blood trailing. If you've hunted long enough, once you start walking towards where that animal was, especially if it's at some distance, things start looking different, right? Now that's true whether you're shooting cross canyon in the Mountain West, or that's true if you're hunting where I do in northern Minnesota, where there's a whole bunch of, small aspen saplings and willow brush and alders and all that kind of stuff. As soon as I climb down from my tree stand, it might be 50 yards, but things look different. So it's nice to have that waypoint to know where to start blood trailing. You can also use this feature before the shot for planning a stalk. If I'm archery hunting elk and I'm glassing a hillside and I see an elk 400 yards away, way outside of archery range, right? But I'm probably not going to be able to walk just a straight line to put a stock on this elk, right? I've got to keep the wind in mind. I've got to keep the lay of the land to try to stay out of sight. But it's nice to mark a waypoint where that elk is bedded or where it's feeded to have a landmark to shoot for. That way, if I have to drop off the other side of the ridge and come around, or I need to go through some thick timber to stay out of sight, I at least have that reference point to be able to tell exactly where that animal is, or at least where it was, right? It's better than going in blind. So I love this feature. It's not something I use every time I hunt, but when I do use it, it's very helpful. To close out of this, just tap exit. There's my waypoint that I had, and we go about our day, whether it's tracking a blood trailing an animal or putting a stock on one or what have you. Okay. We're almost at 7 o'clock. I try to make these as short as possible, and every month I fail to make them short. I'm going to stop sharing on my tablet here, and I'm going to go to my computer. I want to show everybody the onX web map and what that looks like. Just give me one moment to get switched over on Zoom here. Now, what I have on my screen is the onX Hunt web map. This comes with your account. It's not an extra charge or anything. It's all included. All you have to do is go to our website, which is onxmaps.com, log in, same email and password you used on your mobile device. It'll pull up a map like this. Now, I'm going to refresh it because we just marked some waypoints. So that's the waypoint I just marked on my tablet, right? So these two sync up. They talk with each other. Any waypoints I mark on my web map here, transfer to my mobile device and vice versa. Anything I do on mobile, when I log into my web map, it's going to show up there as well. The reason I pulled up this map is twofold. One, a lot of people don't know this exists. I love this for scouting. It's a bigger screen. I can get a better lay of the land than my small phone screen. So if I'm doing some e-scouting, most of the time I'm on my web map here. But I also want to show everybody our different base map and imagery options. So in the lower right-hand corner here, if you can see my cursor, I'm going to go to this button that says HYB2D. And this looks very similar on mobile. If you're still following along on your phone or tablet, same basic functionality. In here is where I can choose my different base maps. So satellite is going to be turned on by default for a lot of folks. And that is, what it sounds like. Satellite imagery, showing me the vegetation, showing me trees and rocks and grass and all that good stuff. If I want to be able to see the terrain better, I'm going to go to topo. Now this is, you might be familiar with paper topographic maps. It gives me these topographic lines to show me the elevation change, and the major ones have feet marks on them, right? 7,000, 6,800, 6,600 to give me a sense of what the elevation is in these areas. Personally, what I use most of the time is this hybrid map because it's the best of both worlds. I can see the imagery and the vegetation as well as the topographic lines. So I can get a sense of, where are the south facing slopes? Where's the north faces? How steep is this country? And another kind of hidden tip here is the waterways that pop when you're in hybrid and topo. So there's a couple of creeks here. When I'm in satellite mode, I get the name of the creek, but I don't really see these other minor ones, and I don't see the stream bed. When I go to hybrid and topo, they're a lot easier to see. And a quick word on some of the symbology here. These straight lines, or I guess solid lines is a better term for it. These are going to be your more permanent creeks and streams, meaning they probably have water year round. These here that have a dashed or dotted line are your more seasonal or ephemeral streams. They might only have water in the spring during runoff or after a large rain event. So if you're going to be backpacking into an area and you're going to need to get water, you might not want to rely on these types of streams to have water. These more solid ones, especially if it's got a name like this, going to be much more reliable. Some of it comes down to, it's woodsmanship. what area of the country am I in? You know, is there typically a lot of water on the landscape? We're in the Northern Rockies here. We typically don't have to go too far to find some water. But hey, maybe it's been a drought. Maybe there hasn't been any rain for a month, 2 months. Some of those are going to be dried up. If you're hiking in and you're like, I don't know if there's going to be water. Hey, but last week it rained for 5 days straight. Maybe there will be water, right? So there's no real way to say 100% one way or the other, but you know, use your wood skills to make that determination. So that's your 3 different base map options. I want to talk about a few different options that are available for elite users, a few different imagery options. The first one we're going to talk about is recent imagery. I can stay in Montana for this one, actually. So recent imagery, it's in this base map menu. Again, you have to have an elite membership. That's one of the things that membership gets you, is recent imagery, which is taken every 2 weeks. Now there's a trade-off with this recent imagery. It's more up to date, it's more current, but the trade-off is it's less detailed. This is not a replacement for our regular imagery. It's just another tool, another piece of the puzzle. So along the bottom of my screen here, I have some date ranges. This most recent image was taken between February 3rd and 17th. We'll be getting a new image here any day now. I can use these arrows to go backward in time. So I can see how, in this case, the snow cover changes throughout the year. We go back to December, we didn't have a whole lot of snow. I can keep going back. And you can go back, I think it's like 2 years now we've had this. So I can go all the way back. Right now, I'm starting to think about spring bear. There's some new areas I want to hunt. So I might go back to May of last year, which was admittedly a pretty low snow year, but I can get a sense of, all right, hey, when does the snow burn off in this area? You know, and every year, of course, is going to be different, but this spot, man, I might be able to hunt this opening day if I want to. Actually, I'm going to be chasing turkeys on April 15th, but if I tag out early, then I'm going to turn my attention to bears. You can see how, you know, that snow melt changes throughout the year. This is useful for waterfowl hunters, for checking water levels. Upland hunters, especially you pheasant hunters, we all know one of the best days to pheasant hunt is the day the crops come out. If you're planning a trip to South Dakota, North Dakota, you might want to be keeping an eye on, hey, where's the corn harvest at right now? Oh, hey, they haven't even started, and we're going to go hunting next week. Might be a little tough. Even if they start harvesting right now, they're probably not going to get it all out, within a few days. Or, hey, we're hunting next week. Let's take a look at the recent imagery. Oh man, looks like a lot of the corn's out. Great, right? I mentioned in the spring checking snow levels. We've had ice fishermen use this to check ice levels on lakes and see what the ice is looking like. So again, not a replacement for our regular imagery, just another piece of information available to you. I'm going to turn that off and I'm going to move over to Wisconsin. Let's talk about leaf off imagery. So again, another tool, another piece of the puzzle. You do have to have an elite membership for leaf off imagery. But you can see this was in response to folks asking for a non-summer image. They're like, man, I don't really hunt in the summer. I'd love to see the land as it is during hunting season. So these are fall and winter images. And it's not available in all areas just yet. All the states that we do have, I believe we're at 15 right now. They're all east of the Rockies, where there's higher prevalence of deciduous forest, right? And where most of our customers who requested this were coming from. But it's pretty sweet. You can zoom in, and this does have decent imagery resolution. So you can start to see, some of those breaks in vegetation a little bit easier, especially if you're in an area where, let me find some conifers. So like here's where there's some evergreen trees, right? It's not so easy to tell with the summer image. But when I turn the leaf off imagery, I can tell, these are pine or spruce or fir trees. This is more deciduous. Actually, this looks kind of like a swamp, but you get the picture. If you are in a state that doesn't have it, you will be able to tell Minnesota, my home state, no leaf-off imagery available. We are trying to add more states as much as possible. Not every state has good imagery available to us. So if we don't have your state, it's not like we're picking on you and just saying, we don't care about Minnesota, right? It's just that we probably haven't been able to get a good image set just yet. But we'll keep working on it. We want to add as many states to this as we can. Okay. Last thing before we get to some of the Q&A and the giveaway, the search feature. If you're on your phone, you're not going to see a search bar like this, like I have in the top left. It's going to be in the upper right-hand corner, and it looks like a magnifying glass. It's going to be above your weather button. That's how you can access the search feature. So one question I hear quite a bit is, how do I add a waypoint from a set of coordinates? Okay, so if you have coordinates, off an old GPS or from another program or a guidebook or something, here's how you do this. You're going to want to type or copy and paste your waypoints your GPS coordinates into the search bar here. You want to do it in decimal format. If you have them in UTM or degrees, minutes, seconds, use an online converter. There's a ton of them for free. You can convert them to decimal. That's going to be easiest. I don't have one to copy and paste, so I'm just going to make one up here. I'm going to go 43 point. I think we go out to 5 decimal places. The more specific you can be, the better. And then my second coordinate, okay, my longitude has to be a negative number. You have to put that dash, that minus sign in front of it. Otherwise, you're going to end up in the Eastern Hemisphere. You're going to end up in Europe or Africa or Asia or something. So if you're looking for North America, it's got to be a minus. So I'm just going to go 100th meridian here. And this result shows up in this menu. Click on it. It's going to bring me to that spot. I'm going to turn off my imagery here. Apologies there. So now that's the coordinate I entered in. If I want to mark a waypoint, I can go down to my menu here at the bottom, hit add waypoint, and boom goes the dynamite. I've got a waypoint marked on that coordinate. Looks like we're right on the South Dakota, North Nebraska line here. So that's how you search for coordinates. You can also search for geographic locations, whether that's a county, a town name, Glacier National Park. Let this think. Click on the first result. It brings me to Glacier National Park. Woohoo, there I am. Again, you could search for mountain peaks, lakes, all kinds of stuff. If I want to search for a private landowner, I'm going to click over to the private land tab. So you have to have this selected. If I try to search for somebody's name in location here, I'm not going to get good results. So I go to private land. I'm just going to pick a generic name, John Smith. There's a lot of John Smiths in here, right? If I know John Smith's middle initial, put that in. The more information you can give the program, the better your results are going to be. The other thing you might notice here is all of these results are in Montana. Flathead County, Lake County, Missoula, Mineral. So the program prioritizes search results based on where the map is. So give it some help. If I'm looking for John Smith in Northwest Montana, I'm in the right spot. If I'm looking for a John Smith that lives in Virginia, I should move my map to Virginia. Then I'm going to get search results for John Smith in Virginia. Now, if it's in the Shenandoah Valley, I know that much, zoom in on the Shenandoah Valley. Zoom in as close as you can get to be able to, help the search out. Then from there, if I'm not sure which one of these John Smiths I'm looking for, I can just start clicking on the results and it'll bring me to those parcels. That's not it. Let's hit the back button. Let's try number 2. That's not it. Hit the back button. Try number 3. You get the idea here, right? That's just how you can find these landowners that you're searching for just by clicking through the different results here. All right. That's all I have for the demo here. We're at an hour and 40 minutes. So thanks everybody for sticking on so far. I'm going to pull my presentation back up here. There's a couple other things I just want to talk about before we sign off. So if you do not currently have an onX membership, we have a discount for you. You can use the promo code APP101. So it's all one word, APP101, saves you 30% off your first year's membership. There's a lot of promo codes floating around there that are 20% off. This one saves you an extra 10%. So you can go to this website here, that's in orange, to purchase it, or you can just go to our website. You cannot use the promo code on the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. If you try to purchase through one of those two, you will pay full price. Promo codes only work on our website. So if you have any trouble with that, shoot us an email. Again, it's help@onxmaps.com. One of our customer support folks will be more than happy to walk you through getting that promo code applied to save yourself some money. Okay, again, it's app101. Saves you 30% there. If you're looking for more information, our website, our help center, is a great source of information. If you're like me, I tend to like to read things to be able to really learn them. It sticks in my brain better that way. So you can go to our tutorials there, our customer support center, all kinds of different articles and frequently asked questions. You can also check out our YouTube channel. We've been releasing, just some fun hunt videos on there recently, but we do have a lot of tutorials and how-tos. That's where all our old masterclasses go. So we've been doing masterclasses. We're going into our 4th year now. So we got quite the back catalog of not just Hunt 101s, but species-specific stuff. So if you want to learn more about calling elk, archery hunting whitetails, using the app for turkey hunting or pheasant hunting or quail hunting, or you name it, we've probably got a class for you. Except for you blacktail and pronghorn folks, I hear you. I'm trying to get some of those classes on the books for this year. But we've got quite a few other ones. You do have to go to the playlist on our YouTube channel. So go to onX Hunt on YouTube, click on playlists, find the Masterclass playlist. They're all listed there. And then also check out our future classes. You can always just Google onX Masterclasses or go to this website here. We're doing a turkey calling class with Lake Pickle and Jordan Blissett. If you're a turkey hunter, you might be familiar with those names. 2 great turkey callers. I think they both on the board in South Florida already from this past weekend. They've got turkeys on the ground. We're going to do a class on hunt research tools, our in-house draw odds calculator. We'll go through how to use that. And then another turkey one coming up in April. I mentioned the giveaway. I'm going to ask one of our customer support folks to drop this giveaway link in the chat. If the link doesn't work for you, some phones won't let you click on the link. You might have to try copy and pasting it or just typing it in manually into a browser. But this is the link right here. Giveaway is going to be open until midnight tonight. So if you're watching this class after March 4th, I apologize. You're not eligible to win, but we do these giveaways at just about every class. I will send an email out to all of the winners tomorrow morning. If you're one of the lucky 10, you'll get an email from me letting you know that you won, and then we'll get your shirt sent out to you. If you don't get an email from me, I'm sorry, you weren't a winner this time. So I'll leave that up for just a bit more so that folks can get entered in. And then let's go to some Q&A. I'm just going to check and see if there were any kind of common questions or things people would like me to go over again. All right, so somebody asked, how do I rotate the map in 3D on a computer? Good question. I'm going to pull my map up on my computer again. So we didn't talk about 3D. Again, it's a bit beyond a 101, but to turn on 3D, I'm going to go down to my base map menu here, hit 3D, and now it's put me into a 3D map. So to rotate the map is going to depend whether you're using a trackpad or a mouse. on a mouse. Typically, it's just a right click and drag it around on my trackpad here. Now, this is kind of a new computer. I'm still learning. I'm doing a right click on mine. I have to click with 2 fingers. And then I'm just kind of swiveling my fingers around. I'm actually keeping one in place and moving my other one. And that allows me to bring it up and down and spin it around. Admittedly, it's much easier with a mouse. So if you're on a computer, if you're on a desktop, that's probably your only option. If you're on a laptop and you have the trackpad and a mouse, I recommend using a mouse, but that's how you can move it around in 3D mode. Let's see here. Next question. Deleting content by bulk. All right, let me get back to my map and to some of my content here. Share my screen again. All right, so if I've got a bunch of waypoints here. Let's say I want to delete them all. I can go into my content, which is on the left-hand side here. You can do this on your tablet or phone as well. You'll go into my content along the bottom, click select, and then I'm going to click on these waypoints. So they all get highlighted here. They have white around them. I could also do this by checking these boxes on my card here. I prefer to do it like this. So let's say I want to delete all of those. I have these all selected. I just click the delete button. That's going to delete all of them. I'm not going to do that because I want to keep these waypoints here. But if I hit delete, they're all going to be removed there. Okay, I think we had one more question here. Are any tools or layers not available offline with an offline map? Good question. Your tools are available online. 3D is not. It will be at some point, but it's not right now. And as far as layers, there's a few layers that are not available offline. And those are going to typically be layers that receive like live updates. So things like precipitation radar. That's a layer that shows like your Doppler radar of the weather moving in. That's not available offline because it's a dynamic layer. It's changing all the time. But by and large, all of your layers are going to be available offline, at least the ones you're typically going to want to use. There's a few, like I mentioned, the precipitation radar, that's not available for offline use. When I go to that menu on my tablet or on my phone, if I hit the details for precipitation radar, it says not available for offline use. So if you're worried about a layer, like, am I going to have this when I'm offline? Find it in your layers menu, tap on the details. It'll tell you if it's not available. If it doesn't say anything about offline use, you can assume it's available for offline use. But if it says not available for offline use, not going to be available, right? All right. Well, that's going to do it for us tonight. Want to thank everybody again. If you have any questions that come up, I know that happens to me all the time after I'm done with a class or a seminar, like, oh, I should have asked that. Shoot us an email, help@onxmaps.com. If you email us tonight, you can expect a response tomorrow. I'm biased, but our customer support is one of the things that makes onX a fantastic company. So we really want to help you guys out. And, hope to see you at a future onX class, whether it's another 101 or one of our other ones. And just once again, thanks everybody, and hope you have a good evening.